evening. I'm Lisa Dorsey, Vice President of Borough Council. I am calling the August 15th, 2023 working session to order. Mike Stefano, President, is not here this evening, and we will have Mr. Flynn by phone, and Nick Allen is not here this evening. Okay, I will start with the first agenda item, or second really, the Pledge of Allegiance, and I will ask Ms. Vaccaro to.
Of the United States of America, and to the republic which stands one nation, indivisible, and liberty.
Thank you, Ms. Vaccaro. Okay, moving on to number 3, comments, suggestions, petitions by residents in attendance regarding items not on the agenda. Mr. Travis?
Brian Travis, 304 South Walnut Street. I have one item that is not on the agenda. I did go through the online process today to get my permits for my vehicles. The form needs a good look. Every single document that's required says optional, and there are not enough spaces to include multiple registrations if you have more than one vehicle.
Okay, we will take that under consideration for the parking committee. Thank you. Mr. Walsh?
Tom Walsh, 318 West Minor Street, speaking as an individual. Oftentimes when I come up here, I get the feeling that I don't know the follow-up, the results. I don't know when I say something, what happens afterward. I am suggesting, since we give our addresses on certain issues, that council respond back to the people that speak during the evening, if it's not suitable to speak back to them at the time of their presentation. My second item is the intersection of High and Bernard Street. Over the years, I have suggested that we get a light for that intersection. It is a heavy traffic area with the 7-Eleven, the Westchester Methodist Church, and 2 multi-use buildings on the other corners. By multi-use, we mean retail on the first floor and a residential on the upper floors. There's plenty of traffic in that area. Children from the east side over on East Bernard, East Minor, sometimes come down there and cross traffic as they run over for snacks at the 7-Eleven, or maybe they're running an errand for their parents. It's dangerous for little kids to be crossing said street. My fourth point, since it is such a dangerous intersection, even for adults, one of my friends who happens to be here tonight was recently hit and nearly killed crossing that intersection at High and Bernard. Then we have another problem. Those west of High Street and south of Market Street, we have a difficult time going from west to east. There's no through route. You have to go up and get on that unofficial parking lot called Market Street that bogs down between Darlington and Walnut Street. You sit and you sit and you sit and wait for this, that, and the other thing. So that's a problem. There's additional problems coming. The apartments on West Market Street, the apartments at the Burger King site. So my question to you is, what can the public, we the people here in this community and in those neighborhoods, what can we do to get a light at that intersection? And the other question is, will you as Borough Council support us? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Walsh. Any other comments? We will take your comments, Mr. Walsh, into consideration for a future meeting. Thank you.
Madam Vice President.
Any other comments? All right, seeing none, I'd like to amend the agenda, and we are going to move item number 9 up to follow comments and suggestions.
Lisa Dorsey, Vice President.
Item number 9 is approved terminating the lease at lot number 5 Methodist Church, High Street, with the attachments. And I imagine that is why we have quite a few attendees this evening. I'd like to remind everyone when you come to the podium to state your name and your address. I'd also like to remind you to keep your comments to 2 minutes. I'd also like to remind you to not repeat things that have already been said. We'd like to keep the meeting moving forward. Once we start hearing repetitive comments, we will call the comments to an end and resume the meeting. Okay? All right, thank you. Now, we'll give council an opportunity to comment on the termination of the lease for the lots. I also like to sort of set the stage and make sure that everyone understands that this is not, was done with a very thoughtful and considerate process. We had a parking study done in 2018 that recommended that we terminate the leases of the lots. So this has not been done as, I think we saw some comments regarding a money grab. It is about equitable distribution and availability of parking, which is an ongoing challenge in the borough. If you are a resident, you know that. So with that, I will open it up for comments from council.
May I pause for just a point of order? I think a vote of council needs to happen to amend the agenda. I didn't hear one.
Oh.
I presume that'll carry, but I just wanted to make sure that was fine.
And I second that.
Thank you. Call
All in
Call-
favor?
call to question, Mr. Metric?
Sure. Ms. Dorsey,
Yes.
Mr. McCoy,
Yes.
Mr. Allen,
Yes.
Mr. McGinnis, Ms. Vaccaro,
Yes.
and Mr. Flynn joining us by phone. The motion carries anyway. You have 5.
All right, so we are considering ending the lease with the Methodist Church in Lot 5 in order to gain more equity in our public lot spaces. This decision came about, it was voted on by the parking committee. It passed 3-0. It came about after a thorough investigation that was actually done in 2018 of our borough's parking needs. We are in the process of doing quite a bit of changes to the borough as far as parking and wayfinding for parking. The systems with which our borough residents and visitors are parking is all going to be slowly and thoughtfully shifted so that people have more equity, more availability, and more accessibility. This is going to be a slow and painful process, and along the way, it's going to feel uncomfortable, but the goal here is to make sure that people are safer, more comfortable, and have an easier access to our borough. So I know that this is very hard for many of you to hear because you know what you know and you like it the way it is, but there's so much more to the borough going on, and we're trying to make everybody come together in a way where we can work together for the betterment of our community. I want to turn this over now to Ramsey Rainier to give a little insight into what is being done here.
So one of my first goals, I started here in November, and one of the first goals was to look at, we have 7 surface lots within the borough, and it was to research the agreements standing across the borough. This is one of, I think, 3 or 4 that we're going to be looking at. The church is fortunate to have a parking lot next to it. So not only do you have the 18 lease spaces, but there would still be 17 spaces available for public parking if this lease is extinguished. And I understand that this is not something I'm looking forward to doing. The goal is, like Sheila and Lisa are saying, is to be equitable across the borough, and to offer this up not in an auction, not to the highest bidder, but to put it in a lottery, just like we do with Lot 3 and like we will likely do with Lot 10 and Lot 7, to see who else in the borough would apply to utilize those 18 spaces. There are other options out there for parking. We would be totally happy to work with you on utilizing. And again, I understand that it's uncomfortable. I don't like being the bearer of bad news. You know, I had kids that went to a daycare in the borough at the Bucket School, and, you know, I understand what it's like to do pickup and drop off, and I think there's some options here that we can use for this. So I'm trying to be mindful of all aspects of this situation. But I think, you know, it's been 20 years and looking at this and seeing that I have a lease from 2003, I think it's time that the borough just does the right thing and revisits it in the responsible way. So that's what I've asked the parking committee and ultimately council to do.
Any other comments from council before we open it up? Okay.
Ms. Dorsey, may I have a point of order first?
Certainly.
Yes, I would, we were told by one of the council people that we would have 3 minutes to speak at the podium. So is this rule changed since we were informed of that?
I thought it was 2. Is it 2 or is it 3, Mr. Metrick?
It can be whatever council decides, but
Well, I asked
Well,
permission for 3 minutes because I prepared
Sure,
for the
3
3.
minutes.
Yeah,
I-
that would be great. And I have a second point of order. We've been led to understand that only people that are residents can come to the podium. Now, if you're a business person and you own a business in the borough and you live outside the borough, are you still allowed to come before this borough council and speak at the podium?
Because you run a business in the borough? Absolutely.
So that means that our director of our children's center, if she chose to speak, could come forward, and the pastor of El Buen Samaritano Church also could. Neither one lives in the borough.
Of what church? I'm sorry.
El Buen Samaritano Church. It's a Spanish language church. It's a sister church in our building and has been for over 20 years.
Okay.
Okay?
So you have three spokespeople today?
Oh, I mean, it's open to the public, so
Okay,
I know of
All
one
right.
other that's very prepared, but other
Okay.
than that, we good?
we're
Okay.
good.
Thank you very much. I'm Truman Brooks, 335 Price Street here in the borough. Ms. Dorsey, distinguished members of the Borough Council, Ms. Reiner, I'm the Reverend Dr. Truman Brooks, Senior Pastor of the United Methodist Church of Westchester. I'm a 19-year resident. I've served the borough on the Human Relations Commission for over a dozen years and on the Ad Hoc Committee of Community Leaders that helped develop the stormwater runoff policy. 2015 is the last time I came before this body to speak. Do you remember that? No, I do. Okay, I do. At that time, it was in the middle of the summer, and the parking committee quietly decided to recommend that the borough start charging for parking on Sundays. You tried to vote through the policy change that would force us to pay to pray. Our church was alerted by neighbors about that vote. We mobilized, we showed up, and we stopped that from happening. Tonight feels an awful lot like deja vu for us. Once again, without any notification or discussion with us, a recommendation has been made that could gravely affect the future of our church and our preschool. Make no mistake about it, for you, this is an exercise in community planning. For us, this is a fight for our lives tonight. For 20 years, we've had an agreement in place with the borough. We've leased 18 spots in lot number 5. We've been a consistent source of income for Westchester, never missing a payment. And we have been good neighbors, serving those in need, opening our doors to individuals and community groups, hosting NA and Boy Scouts in our Children's Center, and all those ministries and outreaches that I sent to all of you as attachment to my email to the council. We have cooperated with local neighbors and businesses, sharing our parking space whenever requested. We have been there for the borough and the county during emergencies, freely opening our building as requested. That's why we are so deeply confused and hurt and frankly angry about this. How could you consider a recommendation like this without talking to us? How could you possibly know how deeply this affects us and our neighbors without discussing the matter with all parties involved? I understand the work of the parking committee is a gargantuan task. We don't want to be your opponents in this. We want to be your allies in this. What I ask of you tonight is to slow the process down. Indefinitely table this recommendation to revoke our leased spots in lot number 5. In your email to our people, several of you emailed our folks back. One of you talked about the possibility of a drop-off and pickup spot for our children's center, which would be an absolute disaster for the neighborhood, and we can tell you why if you ask us. You speak of putting these leased spots up for an annual lottery. That's the term that was used in the meeting last Tuesday night, an annual lottery. No local business can do planning for the future when they're uncertain about how many parking spaces they're going to have year after year. Better plans can be made when we all work together rather than just a
Pastor.
handful working in the dark with an old master plan. Please do not entertain this recommendation. Bring all the concerned parties into a room and let's listen together and share our
Mr.
needs
Brooks, I'm
together
gonna have to
and build
stop
some
you there.
trust together. And
Thank
thank you
you.
very much for your attention. And we ask you to do the right thing tonight.
Thank you. You.
Hello, my name is Erin Travis. I'm at 304 South Walnut Street. I ask permission for 2 minutes and 34 seconds, and I would also like a point of order to ask a question. My understanding is that the parking study, the one done from the folks in McLean, Virginia, was started in 2016 and reported to Westchester Council in 2018. Is that correct?
I believe so, yes.
Okay, so the study began in 2016, and we don't even have that detail right. So may I begin my remarks? Is that
You may
correct?
begin your remarks, but just a point of
Can we check-
correction is we provided that what I said was that the report was from 2018, and that is true.
Correct. I'd love to get clarification at the end of the meeting. All right, obviously I'm against this rollout.
Yeah, thank you.
Do I still have my 2 minutes and 34 seconds? Okay, all right, thank you. Okay, all right, obviously I'm against this proposal. Although my comments do align with Truman's, they are different because they speak to the mission statement of Borough Council. Our mission statement is that we will do things in a way that is fair, that is transparent, and that recognizes the rights of our citizens to influence local decisions. This is not fair as rolled out and communicated. I'm a resident. My senior pastor is a resident. Residents go to our church. Our church serves residents. I don't even know if you all know about our sister congregation, El Buen, that meets in our building. They are residents, Spanish-speaking residents, and they live here too. Were their voices included in this proposal? And I've had a chance, and I'm really frustrated. How is revoking a 20-year lease without an in-person conversation fair to us? I get that it was an agenda item, but really no call to the senior pastor, no let's get the church's input. How does that live up to our mission statement? How does a study, and I get it, it's a parking study. I read part of it. I'm an academic. I get it. There are no voices in that study. There's no talk about the people from the people who would be impacted. We can do better. All right. I mean, and these form letters that we're getting, there's two big consistencies. One, you're communicating a shocking lack of understanding of this unique situation that we face. Two, you are not providing details. You're not providing evidence to bolster your claims. Instead, we get, and I'm sorry to say this, somewhat patronizing, it's going to be okay. It's hard. We know it's hard. We need more than that. So let me give you a better way. Slow down. Have a conversation with us. We shouldn't be discussing this idea for the first time as part of a borough working session. No more platitudes, no more, hey, everything will be fine. You'll have plenty of spaces. More justification. We're a creative bunch. Between revoke the lease and don't revoke the lease, there are a bunch of different options. Residents deserve better. We deserve the time to find those solutions. Table this idea until we put in the time, dialogue, negotiation, creativity, and research it deserves. Please, let's live up to our mission statement.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Valerie Burnett. I live at 709 Hillside Drive. The borough has been my home since 1975, and the Methodist Church has been my church home since 1969. This is my home. The ministries of our church are truly important to our community. Our goal is always to increase the way we serve, and we do that through our best resource, our human capital. In 2014, I served as a member on our church's ad hoc parking committee. Our goal was to partner with neighbors to find much-needed additional parking space for our existing members and hopefully our future members. We surveyed our congregation and our Children's Center families to understand the volume of our parking needs, the critical times, and the unique needs for our handicap parking and safe parking for our families with young children. We walked the surrounding blocks at all possible times to identify possible parking locations 4 blocks out from our church. We reached out to neighbors and businesses to seek possible partnerships for sharing any available spaces when practical. We were not able to secure a single parking spot. That was 2014. We explored the option of remote parking with the shuttle service, and this was not a practical solution either for our members or our ministry's needs. And now we're 9 years later, and we're realizing the additional impact of recent growth in traffic on parking in the borough. Every day, we seek to engage, connect, and help our neighborhood and the world. When we gather to serve, and we need to park to gather, we have packed tens of thousands of meals for Rise Against Hunger. We've provided hundreds of mosquito nets for Imagine No Malaria. We plan and provide meals for Salvation Army and Safe Harbor. And we have so many other ministries and service projects throughout the year. Our church is busy all week long and most evenings. We have come to rely on these parking spaces to gather together, to plan, to imagine, and accomplish our missions. We have been committed to serving the borough of Westchester for over 200 years. Please let us continue. Thank you.
Are there any other comments?
My name is Mackenzie Carroll, and I'll be representing 129 South High Street. Good evening. I'm the interim director of United Methodist Children's Center. At our center, we have 80 children. They come to our center year-round. They start at 3 months old, and we go all the way up to 5th grade. We have 30 staff members and various volunteers from the community who depend on a parking lot for safe and easy access to the building. It was mentioned earlier that other schools do the carpool lane. At our center, this wouldn't be feasible. We are on the busiest street of Westchester, and we have one of the largest schools in the Westchester community. Many other schools have the means for this, but we just simply do not. We want safe and feasible options for our children. If forcing them into this carpool lane or a various other object, it wouldn't be safe. These children are toted in, usually one parent carrying multiple children on each hip. Asking them to go even 15 more feet, as was described in one of the email responses we received, would be risking children's lives and safety every single time they come in or out of our school. I pride myself on making our center a place for children to come and know that they are loved and safe. Taking away their parking would seize their safety. Please understand the magnitude of this decision. I understand that you are in a difficult position, but if you choose to end the lease, please understand the risk of not only forcing our families into an unsafe pattern, or forcing a closure on our center. We have fought so hard through COVID to keep our center open. Please keep us in mind when you're making your decision. Thank you.
Good evening. Steve Galama, 214 Price Street. I believe most of the parents are here because we're worried about our kids getting hit by a car. All due respect, there aren't creative solutions. We can't park on the other side of High Street and cross High Street with 3 kids, right? We can't park on High Street and get kids out of a car. It's really dangerous to do. So if you take away these parking spots, where are we supposed to go? The alley's already too tight to get a second car through, and the parking lot's already pretty sketchy as it is. So I don't know where else we're supposed to drop our kids off at. There's 4 spots in the back and the staff parks there. So I don't know. And when it comes to Pennsylvania schools, are there rules and laws about safe drop-off zones? If this gets deemed to be not a safe drop-off zone, are you going to close the school? Like, there aren't solutions here unless you're going to start knocking houses down in the alley. And I don't think that's going to happen. So I just don't know where you expect us to park and drop off our kids. Like she said, we got more than one in our hands, and the weather's nice now, but that's not going to last much longer.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Hi, my name is Kendra Mancini. I live at 319 Dean Street. I've been a resident since 1991 and a member of the church almost that long. I'll keep my remarks short. If the Borough Council's goal is related to the equitable use of the 18 parking spots, I would argue that the church serves more organizations and more diverse groups, and the community as a whole more so than having a lottery where it's possible that specific individuals would have parking spots and it would not then serve the larger community. There are multiple organizations external to the church that will be impacted should the parking arrangement change. Narcotics Anonymous, Boy Scouts, Westchester Orchestra for their holiday concert, people having weddings, funerals. And there are significant church events that fundraise for groups like Stop Hunger Now that will be also impacted. I feel there could also be additional costs incurred by the borough due to potential signage changes if the lease arrangement is changed. And there could be questions about how to enforce that as well. So I would like to respectfully request that Borough Council reconsider a negotiation with the church to preserve the parking lease in a new format, in a new format outfitted for a new age. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Reverend Mercedes Case. I work at 129 South High Street. I'm the associate pastor at the church. I've also been a member of this church for over 30 years. I've seen all the good that it does for the children, youth, and adults, and the seniors in our community. And just to highlight one particular ministry, Sunshine Memory Cafe, the ability and availability of having the parking lot next door is vital to our attendees. These are people with various levels of dementia, and their caregivers bring them to this. They're often have mobility issues, they're on limited incomes, and having that parking spot right next to the church encourages them to come and be together. And so, we just love having our senior members and their families come to this event. Having that safe environment where they can come, park, be near the church, and come in to work together and learn together and be together means the world to our attendees. 20 years ago, this church made a commitment to stay in the borough while other churches chose to leave. We are committed to stay here in this community, but we need your help. So all we're asking is, let's talk, find a way to work it out together. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Francis Etuahene, and I represent 129 South High Street. I'm also a professor at Westchester University, so I'm a taxpayer, and I've been a member of this church over a decade. And I also represent the president of the board of United Methodist Church Children's Center. I think we all understand the concept of equity. We understand the concept of accessibility. But this decision is not going to create equity. This decision is actually antithetical to the concept of equity, to the concept of accessibility. You are actually taking away accessible parking from the individuals who need them the most and redistributing to people who probably don't need them. We've heard about you're going to have access to parking about 15 feet. We want someone to tell us where that parking is. That decision has not yet been made. Just imagine, and I send out email to you all those elderly people who have to come to church for a service of love and having to walk on their workers for long distance to the church because of that lack of convenience. Just imagine all the people that we have in the church who meet regularly, on regular basis, pack meals, help our society, help people feed them, go to a safe harbor, all the things, the good things that this church is doing, and not be in a position to come and have the convenience of a parking spot. So we understand the issue of finance has been brought up, but we are also aware that it is considerable degree some part of this decision that is being made. We've heard that about $75 could be made a month for each spot. So we understand all these things, but we entreat you to be considerate. Just the 18 spots will not change dramatically anything. So, madam, please be considerate in your decision. Thank you.
Okay, I think we could take one more comment.
Try not to scare him over here. My name is Ashley Grothouse. I live at 25 East Minor Street. I am one of those parents that Mackenzie spoke about that comes in every morning with one kid on the hip and one on the side. I'm here to represent all the other of our friends and other parents at this school that could not get up here to speak. We do have the luxury of, on a nice day, walking to school. But most of our friends do not have that luxury. When it is raining, when it is snowing, I do need to drive the kids to school some days. My mother-in-law, she helps out with picking up our children after school and taking them to her home. The thought of her having to circle around, find a parking spot for my 4-year-old and 5-month-old is scary. You know, nobody wants that. That is, it's scary, especially her. You know, she's not there every single day. And I don't know if she'd know how to navigate that. No offense to her, but you know, so I do ask that you guys reconsider this, or at least, you know, work with the church, work with the Children's Center to find a solution. As a resident in that area, my parking is a nightmare. I will attest to that. There have been many a times at night where I have these 2 little ones and I have to go to the parking, the pay station, and I'm worrying about getting my money in and are they okay? And the thought of our other friends at school having to do that, you know, some parents have 3 kids with them, just to run in for a few minutes. That's scary because I've had her almost run away from me in the parking lot, and it's very scary. So thank you for listening. I hope that you guys change your mind, or at least, you know, work with this community to come up with some viable solution. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I would like to thank United Methodist Church and recognize all the good works that you bring, and so many other churches in the Westchester community that bring needed services and support to so many in our community, and the community that you've created at your church. We have, I don't know, 14, 15 churches in Westchester, in the borough. And I think our community would be very different without that representation, as well as, you know, nonprofits that are providing some of those services, as well as daycares in the borough that have some of the same challenges that United Methodist does with parking. I also would like to say that as Ramsey said, we are willing to work with the church to find viable solutions for one-day events, everyday events, for your parking. This is not intended to be adversarial or contentious. We want to work with you. Could we have reached out to you in advance of having this discussion? I was going to agree with you. How parking study has been in existence for several years, and executing on it is a bit overdue. Again, you know, as I stated in my opening remarks, it is about equity and availability. We hear you loud and clear around your concerns, and we do believe that we can find viable solutions.
I have three main points that I want to make. And the first one is very important and sort of separate from what the parking issues are. The reason we didn't go to the church directly, because the first couple of speakers made that loud and clear that you felt wronged. Understand that this is about public transparency. This is about having this conversation in public. We have in this borough a number of backroom agreements in existence. Yours is less backroom than some, and it disgusts me. And the reason we're doing this publicly is so that this is done publicly. We're not going to call you and have some private arrangement just because you are you guys. This is real. This is a problem not just in our borough. This is a problem all over this state where government officials are making private arrangements and lawyers are going back over minutes to prove something that was said 12 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago. I refuse to let that happen. I demand that we come out, all of us come out and publicly discuss what is going on and what we are trying to do and what you are trying to do so that we can do this in a very transparent way for our community at large so that everyone can see what's going on. So that's my first point. I did not want anyone to feel slighted by the lack of a direct phone call. This needs to be done publicly so that everyone is aware of the situation because this involves all of us, not just the council and the church. Next is the concept of a loading zone for the children who are being dropped off at the church. The Y, which is sort of around the corner from you on a very busy street, that cars on Chestnut Street drive faster than some of the cars on High Street. This was a very real problem. They were double parking, cars were being hit. This is a problem on Chestnut Street from years ago. And the Y worked with us and we set up loading zones for the children to enter and exit the building. This is a large institutional building where children are being loaded in and out, and they didn't have a way of doing it. And they worked with the borough and we set up loading zones for those children, and they work significantly better and much safer than parents parking in a lot and having a child possibly run away. I know this story. I've done children on my hip, children in my hand. I've done children in parking lots, and I've done children in loading zones, and the loading zones are much, much safer. And we've done it in the borough, and I've been a part of loading zones in the borough at many different public places. The third thing is signage is terrible right now in our borough, and we have that in our prepared to go into our budget for next year. That is another priority. We want to move towards a better system for paying for the kiosks, so maybe you can just do it on your phone and you don't have to get out and tinker with anything in particular. I want this wayfinding signage to be clear. I want the parking to be accessible to everybody. I want the loading zones to be helpful and only appropriate and not a hindrance. So there's a lot of stuff happening here. There's a lot of moving parts, and know that this is not me trying to work against you. I can't stand this adversarial thing where you think that I'm a terrible person for taking this away from you. I'm trying to add to your experience. I'm trying to make your children safer. I'm trying to make our borough healthier.
Mr. Carter, are you done? Mr. McCoy?
Yeah, thanks. First, I have to say, I hear all of you and I've seen all your emails. I have not responded to them because knowing that many of you would be here this evening, I have to say my first thought also was, why didn't we contact them and have a conversation? With all due respect, I mean, there's an existing agreement. I don't see why we couldn't have just started a conversation
Numbers go up.
to begin with. And I would,
Numbers go down that way. Like 2, 3, 4.
I would say, I think we need to take a step back and we need to have those conversations. It's in the open now. I think Ramsey and the church leadership should have a discussion to understand what their needs are. I don't know when they use it, what times of day, what days of the week, et cetera, but I think this could be done much more thoughtfully and as
Any other comments from council? Mayor, Madam Mayor, any comments? No? Okay, I think we have to call whether to add this to discussion or consent for tomorrow night.
You call Mayor?
Is it, would Bernie like to say something?
I think you made the call.
Okay. So I, I will call that, I'm sorry. I will call this for a vote. Add to the consent agenda.
Well, first I said to them, I said, listen.
I mean, I think, Mr. McCoy, you were saying that you wanted a little more time on this. I'm interested in
I said to them, listen, you guys can all believe what you
interrupting someone.
I've been doing this way more than any of you.
Right, and I just like, personally, I know we do complicated things on council all the time with tons of people. It gets super complex and we get in the weeds. And I totally agree that that's the kind of stuff that I want to do publicly, because I want to be transparent about all of that. This to me is another one of those classic things, like problems like this we've dealt with all the time. It's what we do, and it's really difficult sometimes. And not like everyone doesn't always get what they want, which is really hard as well, because I'd love to give everyone what they want all the time. And that's the hard part about this job, unfortunately. But for me, I'd be interested in learning more about, the tangibly what this would look like. So I would like it to be, at the very least on discussion for tomorrow. If not, we can, continue the conversation moving forward. The loading zone idea, modeling that after the YMCA does make sense to me. It does seem like there's a lot of it seems like a similar environment. I think there's probably more curb space with the YMCA. But I'd be interested just to know, like, how many kids are going in and out of the YMCA? How many kids are coming in and out of the church daycare? And I think that's kind of stuff that we can totally talk about and can totally solve moving forward.
Ms. Dorsey, if I could make another comment. I mean, I think that we would be very unwise to terminate this lease and not allow the church to have a backup plan, at least for however long. I think it needs to be studied. I do not think we should be, if we vote on it tonight, I will vote no to terminate the lease. I think we should take some time to study this further. At a minimum, it has to go on voting.
yeah, it's an item for discussion or consent, right, for tomorrow night. And just for clarification, the termination would be 60-day notice.
What I would suggest is that the conversations continue between the church and the borough. One of the things in reading the 99 emails that I received, because it was probably pretty close to that, is all the things the church does in the community. It's a very, very active church. I knew that because my niece goes there. But it's probably one of the most active in the borough at a difficult location. And of course, we want to see you stay in the borough as long as possible. However, leases do need to be updated. And so, you have to give to get. So I think we should have an active, good, thorough discussion between the key people in the church and, of course, council and Ramsey Reiner. She's doing a good job because what she has done is brought to the attention all these outdated contracts and, as Sheila has said, backroom deals that have come up through the years. And talking about inequitable, If you had a clue as to how some lots are treated and other lots are treated, it's just a little bit of craziness. And so she's trying to bring a sense of sensibility to all of the contracts in the borough. And so you're not looked at as a target. We do appreciate and value your input in this community. And I know a good part of what you've done in the community. Now I know a lot more. I feel like I could be a member at this point because I know everything, including the 2 different Spanish churches. But what I would say is that we do need to, as Patrick has said, continue the conversations. The church will have to change your thinking, and we will have to change our thinking. And by doing so, I think we can arrive at something that it might not be totally what you want, it might not be totally what we want. But I think we can, we're all want the best for the borough. These members here, these borough council members want the best for the borough, and so does the church. And on that, I think we can all agree.
Mr. Metrick?
Thank you, Madam Vice President. Currently, there's a motion on the table to not call the question, but to take a vote. There are subsidiary motions that can be made currently. The only 2 that overrule that are to table the motion, which, and I'll read that exactly what that means, is to postpone action on the motion temporarily without assigning a time for resuming its consideration. If a member of council were to make that motion and council were to approve that motion, then Ms. Vaccaro's motion would naturally extinguish. The only other motion that can be made is to adjourn the meeting. So you got 2 choices. You can call the vote, or a member of council can lay it on the table.
Clarification, I don't believe that there was a second.
There was not.
There was no second. So therefore, there's no motion. I'd like to make a motion to put this on discussion for tomorrow.
Do we normally second putting things on discussion?
we
I feel
don't.
like if
We don't.
we don't
I-
consent, we put it on
Yeah.
discussion and move on.
Okay, so at this point, it looks like it's on discussion. We don't have the support to move forward to the consent agenda. Okay?
And for the members who have attended this meeting, and thank you so much. I haven't seen this many people in the room in a long time. What council has just done is said when there are matters that council is considering and there's no consensus or unanimous opinion on what should be done, they'll put it on the discussion agenda, which means it'll be discussed further tomorrow night and possibly voted on at that meeting. We usually take those items and put them at the very top of the agenda, and then whatever else council consents to agree on tonight gets voted on in one big block at the end of the agenda.
So I hear you, and right.
If you,
So-
I'm sorry, if you'd like to speak, please come to the podium. We can't have people yelling from the audience.
I think the people that are so invested here tonight are wondering how this really helps any of the cause. And does this mean we all have to show up again tomorrow night? And will that be helpful to you if we do?
If there's any new information, I can't imagine that there is tomorrow night. I think you should allow council to discuss it tomorrow, and we'll determine next steps tomorrow evening.
Okay. And do we get a chance to speak tomorrow night too then, or is it just a
Sure.
council discussion? Okay. Okay. And what time would that be?
The meeting starts at 6:30. And again, like, if you have new information that you have not shared, and Ramsey, can I ask that you have a conversation with Pastor between tonight and tomorrow?
Yes,
meeting?
and can I just say a couple of things, because I think there's two relevant pieces of information that haven't been said in this meeting. One, I just want to remind everyone that Will reminded me this evening that there is a traffic calming plan going on to High Street that would help with the speeding on High Street that everybody kind of, knows about. So that would be implemented in regards to the loading zone opportunity that we would be happy to talk about in front of the church for pickup and drop off times. The other discussion point that should be noted is, a lot of these events that are held at the church are in the evening, and these permitted.
No.
Okay, please. Many of the events are held, I'm just going by some of the things that I've read. You have a long list of things that I've read, and you have 17 spaces in that lot that are public, right? And there were many things listed. These permitted spaces would be available for all public use after 5 PM. So just want to keep in mind that there would still be 33 spaces available after 5 PM. So there would be public parking available, but I'm just trying
Yeah.
to keep that.
What you're saying is we have not been heard tonight, and you're not going to discuss this with us further. You're just going to go ahead and vote the way you plan on voting. That's very disturbing to us.
I was just offering another piece of information. I'm definitely happy to have a conversation. I just wanted to state that for the record.
Okay.
May I,
Okay, I'd like to have order, please.
may I ask a question?
Sure.
So, Erin Travis again, 304 South Walnut Street. If I haven't said it before, thank you, Borough Council. I know you have tough jobs. As you can tell, we're all getting very, very upset, and I'm trying to be rational and calm. I want to sort of clarify maybe the procedure, so we're understanding. So everybody from Borough Council is here tonight, correct? Or represented, with exception of Mr. Stefano,
And
right?
Mr. Flynn, we
Who
have
is
not been-
available, but he's on the phone, right?
Well, we haven't been able to connect with him, or
Okay.
hear him.
So procedurally, what is the difference between tonight and tomorrow night? I know it's a working session, but how would the vote change? How, if we had a discussion, if Mr. McCoy said he is in favor of taking a step back and having a discussion, how is that going to change tomorrow night? Like, why? I don't understand the process.
We will have further discussion tomorrow night, and there will be a decision to either move forward or continue, as Mr. McCoy has indicated,
Okay.
further review.
Okay. So one more question, and I'll sit down. How will that discussion be different from tonight's discussion?
I don't know that it will.
Yeah. Thank you.
Well, I think it will be different because the council people haven't had an opportunity to discuss it. So what they will do tomorrow night, correct me if I'm wrong, is, may I finish? Okay. So tomorrow night, the difference will be that the council people have heard everything that you've said and read, hopefully, and they will have an opportunity to discuss it amongst them, which that has not happened yet.
Okay,
So
I'm Karen Herr. I live at 331 Dean Street. I've lived there for over 50 years. You cannot have a discussion without both parties being involved. You may think you've heard everything, but in the end of the day, you have to sit down. I would appreciate your sitting down with members of our church, the administrative council, the children's board staff. Sit down with us and talk about what happens, because I still don't think you have an idea. The other difference between the Y and our churches, we have a one-way street with parking. There is nowhere to have a drop. There is absolutely, it's not like, I know what the Y is like. There's room there. It's actually three lanes, so you can have 2 ways and you have the parking. You cannot do that at our church. Please have a dialogue with people from our church, not just a discussion with you. And there are a lot of people here. We need to have dialogue so you understand our situation. I appreciate your attention.
Thank you. Okay, this will be the last comment this evening on this topic.
Sure. Steve Galamba again, 214 Price Street. Just something you said, Nick, about tangible. This is what tangible looked like to me. I'm going to come down the alley, and if none of the spots in the back are full, I'm going to keep going. I'm going to turn into the lot. If there's a meter spot, I'm just going to use it. If there's an open spot, I'm just going to use it. If there's no spots, I'm going to drive all the way through looking. And if I get to the end and there's no spots, I'm stopping my car, I'm getting out, and I'm getting my kids in. And if that backs up High Street, I don't care. And that's what's going to happen. We're going to back up High Street.
Thank you.
Ms. Dorsey, if I could,
Yes, Mr. McCoy.
I don't feel like having a further discussion tomorrow night is going to do anything for me until I have more information to work with. I'm not sure
Sorry.
what the rush is to.
Are you suggesting that we table it?
Yes, I would make a motion to table this.
Okay. Is there a second?
Can you hear me, Miss Dorsey?
Yes, Mr. Flynn, finally.
I've been trying. I second Mr. McCoy's motion to table it, and as I agree
Okay.
that we should sit and have a calm conversation with parking, the church, and one or two representatives from the council.
Okay. The- Seems we will table the item and take an opportunity to share more information. Okay. Moving on to agenda number 5
We need to.
for
we're-
ACT Administration Communications. Oh, I'm sorry. I missed number 4. Mr.
You have to call the question to the table.
Okay. We have a motion. We have a motion and a second on the floor. Mr. Metric, would you call the question, please?
Yes, Mr. Flynn,
Can you hear him?
Ms. Vaccaro. She said no. Mr. McGinnis, Mr. Allen,
Yes.
Mr. McCoy, Ms. Dorsey,
No.
Mr. Flynn.
Is that everybody?
Can you hear me? It's frustrating. Can you hear me?
You seconded the motion, so I assume
Yes.
your vote is yes. Okay.
That's
So-
correct.
Okay. Okay. We are going to resume with number 4.
Clarification. What motion did we just deal with?
Table the,
Oh, okay. With the crowd and all, I didn't know what motion you were dealing with. Thank you.
okay, thank you, Mr. Walsh. All right, we are going to resume with the agenda. Number 4, the Westchester Fire Department draft budget and contract.
Thank you, everybody. I circulated a presentation to council and some supporting documents covering the renewal of the 5-year fire services contract with our surrounding municipalities through the Westchester Fire Department. If we could go to the presentation that I have in attachments and show the second slide there. we talk a lot about regionalizing services, and I think public safety is a really good suite of services that can be regionalized effectively. Fire services run very expensive pieces of equipment, and they can cover a lot of territory, so there's economies of scale to be won over in providing fire prevention services. The Westchester Fire Department covers an area spanning 6 municipalities, covers all of Westchester Borough, and it serves a population of a little over 57,000 residents in East Bradford, West Goshen, Westtown, Birmingham, and Thornbury. So what we had done is look carefully at the existing budget that you all had been circulated earlier, and tried to look at what changes were coming over the next 5 years in terms of operating and capital expenses. So I want to make one point first off, is that the contract that we're coming out of, the cost to each of the members of the fire department were flattened or smoothed on a straight line over the 5 years. So if you can imagine, if you did that with every contract, what it would look like on a graph, it'd look like a staircase, right? So your first year coming into the new contract, there'd be a big increase in the pricing, and then you'd have a flat payment for 5 years. So when I got together with the township managers over the last couple of months to put this budget together, we all thought maybe it would be an easier sell to our municipalities to do not a staircase model, but a smooth line where the costs increase slightly year over year. So that's the method we used. And what you're going to see as a result of that is an increase in the first year, and then about a 3.4 or 3.5% increase in years 2 through 5. So I wanted to be kind of clear about that, because that might look a little out of place when you first look at the budget. So there's 2 processes we go under to figure out what the budget's going to be. How big is the pizza pie going to be? I mean, how much does it cost to run the fire department? And then what size slices do we cut it up into? And that's the cost share formula that's mentioned on this slide. And the method for calculating the cost shares is unchanged from the previous contract, but we got much different results this time around. If you look at the next slide, there's the new pie, so to speak, and call volumes, where we used a 3-year average of call volumes in our municipalities, and the percentage of calls that Westchester Borough was logging was about the same as it was in the last contract. Roughly half of the calls are made within the borough's boundaries. What changed we didn't change the method, but what changed in the results in calculating the assessed value of properties in all the municipalities in the borough was that we came up with a larger number in Westchester Borough. I wasn't here the last time it was calculated. I know we've had some development in the borough, but I can't tell you why the assessed value is so much higher as of right now today in the borough compared to the last time we did the contract. We have some thoughts about that, but nothing's been verified. So because of the borough's number there at almost $1 billion of assessed value is significantly higher, that means our piece of the pie got about 5% bigger compared to the outgoing contract. And that's the reason behind what you'll notice if you've looked further down the contract at the bottom line cost, why the bottom line costs are going up in this draft budget for the borough. I want to emphasize too, this is a draft budget, and I should have talked a little bit about process at the beginning of my presentation to say myself and the other managers that are involved in this in the Westchester Fire Department, we're all doing the same thing this month. We're taking the draft budget that you see before us. We're talking to our boards and our councils, and we're getting feedback on it. We're not making any decisions. There's no action item tonight on this budget item. We want to get some feedback from you all about what more we can do, what you're comfortable with, what you're not comfortable with, and then potentially reconvene with the townships this month and work out those details so that we can have something that 6 municipal elected bodies can agree to sometime during this budget season, which is really going to start heating up next month. So if we go on to the next slide, this is going to refer to the budget that I sent to you, which if you have the packet in front of you is actually the second to last sheet of the second to last sheet of the packet. So we want to talk a little bit about the line items first. Let's start with the operating expenses, administration expenses. What does that include? That includes bank fees. That includes a number of other. Do you have the sheet? That includes our bank fees, mostly, and our employee overhead to actually run the Westchester Fire Department. In the last contract, for some reason, the administrative expenses were taken out. And in the contract prior to that, they were in there. And you'll see why I think that was, I think we need it in there because there's expenses that the borough incurs running the Westchester Fire Department. The management team expends its time and money to make these decisions, to meet. We have staff in the finance department who are accountants. So we have administrative assistants working on processing payments and administrative issues. When things come up with workers' comp claim, our director of human resources handles that. When we have claims coming up with damage to property, Dana hops in and handles those claims for us. So there's a lot of overhead that's circulating around that wasn't accounted for. And I think you'll see how that helps our bottom line when we look a little bit closer at the administration expenses. I estimate that about 72% of these administrative expenses, of that $80,000, are money the borough expends to make the fire department run. And that would come back to the borough in the form of a transfer to the general fund from the fire fund. So when you look at the bottom line year-over-year increase for the budget in our expenses, it's a big number, I admit. But we have to discount that big number by the amount of money that's going to be coming back towards us. And that's the last slide of this presentation that I'll finish on. Members of the Westchester Fire Department are here this evening. If you have specific questions about any of these things, I would encourage you to ask some questions about the allocation of fire companies line item. In fact, I might ask Steve just to come up and talk about that for a second or two. You get more time than that. Sure. More than 3 minutes. Utilities are what you expect. There are stipends paid to the assistant chiefs and chief of the fire department, modest stipends. That's pretty self-explanatory. Equipment repair and maintenance covers everything that doesn't roll or move. And then we're getting down to the allocation to fire companies. Maybe you could shed some light on that.
Good evening, Steve Pelna, Fire Chief. Just a couple of things to build on for Mr. Metric. Also, on the admin costs, we also have Public Works. Remember, our mechanics, along with our Public Works Director, we utilize those folks for repairs to our rolling stock. So that's another big item there. The stipends, just a point of order for that. The chiefs don't receive any of that. That's for the captains. So we have 4 individual captains. So the houses are truly run by the captains each and every day. So I'm a little shorter than you there. As far as the allocation to the fire companies, that's split in somewhat half, just to use round numbers. Half of it goes to the individual fire companies. The other half goes to the fire department, where that's broken up primarily as PPE, or personal protective equipment. We pulled the numbers for the last year to outfit one firefighter, $6,444.15. That's one firefighter. So that includes coat, pants, boots, suspenders, helmet, firefighting gloves, rescue gloves, and so on. There's 12 things that each individual firefighter will get. On an annual basis, we purchase about 21 sets of firefighting, structural firefighting gear. It equates to just under 140,000 rough numbers. So that's in general. We have anywhere between 120 and 150 spots at the firehouses. So somewhere between 40 and 50 sets, 40 or 50 gear lockers you guys have seen as you come around to the firehouses of those individuals. So we're not replacing all 150 individuals, 120, 150 individuals every year. What we're replacing is the wear and tear on the gear. So NFPA, or National Fire Protection Association, tells us 10 years. We get 10 years out of a set of gear. Now, we're very fortunate here in the borough, or at least our fire department, as far as the activity that our individuals or our firefighters go through. So not only responding to events, but also the training. We have the training center. So for all that time we're investing to better our team, it's wear and tear on the PPE. So even though the lifespan can be up to 10 years, we greatly reduce that by half or even less for a majority of our personnel. So that's where a lot of the changeover happens with that. Also, water rescues, we see more and more, especially this time of year, it seems like we're having some kind of storm every night. I spoke at the last public safety meeting about the water rescues that we did have. So we replaced our dry suits as well. They're a tune of about $1,200 a piece. So that's something that a material that doesn't quite last as long. So we're replacing about 5 of those suits a year. So that's of a tune of about $6,000. Our PPE that we can't get replaced, we try to launder it, professionally launder it. Our Firemen's Relief Association has placed industrial washers and dryers in all the firehouses. So on a regular basis, we're cleaning it ourselves. However, most of the gear goes out once a year, sometimes more than that, depending upon a situation, especially a hazardous material type of event where the contaminants in the building may adversely affect us. So we send that out for professional laundering, anywhere between $500 and $1,000 to send a set of gear out for that. Then we get into our equipment. So some of our equipment lost, broken, we call it any type of event, which I've reported on before. We go out to these large events, we break equipment. It's obvious it's inherently a dangerous profession. What we do, things break. So some of our smaller items, standpipe kits, air monitoring devices that we're going out, along with hand tools, Class A foam. This is a line item that you recently passed on the cost recovery. So hopefully in the future we can find a way to decrease this. But again, that's for the larger events. That's what we're going with that. But we're not going to be able to cost recover that to Mrs. Jones' house that we're going to each and every day. When we talk about the firehouses, where does that money go? We do have the utility line item that's up there. So that's your fuel for heat, electric, and so on. But there's other utilities associated with that. So now I'm getting into that contribution of the fire companies that we're putting out to the individual fire companies. So this could be anything from building supplies, alarm system monitoring, trash removal, foam maintenance, electrical, HVAC, upgrades we've been seeing, especially with our Going Green initiative, some of our lighting that we're doing in the firehouse to decrease those utility costs, preventative maintenance, ground maintenance, could be something as simple as sealing the driveway, repairing roofs, anything any of us deal with owning a home, just on a larger scale. Obviously, the fire companies are our live-in program. A majority of the funds for all three have been going to that as far as upgrades within the station. So we went from 3 stations that couldn't accommodate people 24/7 to now we're moving to that as far as additional bathrooms, eating areas, cooking areas, and so forth. So winter, summer, fall maintenance, obviously mulching, snow removal, and grass cutting. So sorry, I went on a little longer in 2 seconds. So that's kind of the contribution of the fire companies for that line item.
Thank you. I do have a question here regarding 2024. East Bradford, -2.42%, Thornberry, -3.05%, Birmingham Township, -12.6%. So that means that from 2023, they're going to be paying less in 2024.
Yeah, any municipality with a negative percentage number, their payments in 2024 are going down.
Now, is that due to the call, the volume, and everything from the
It's
previous
mostly
year?
due to some of the call volume shifted. The other users, you mentioned Birmingham, Thornbury, they're very small volume users. Just aren't a lot of calls to begin with. So it's not really call volume. Where the needle moved the most was on the borough's assessed value. In our calculations, it went up and then everything else adjusted.
Alan was on that, Brett Snyder was on that. Mr. Metric, Bernie Flynn? Mr. Metric, Bernie Flynn?
Yes.
It's pretty frustrating. I don't think I'll do this again. But anyway, my question to you is, are all 5 municipalities paying the entire, splitting the entire fixed costs to run the fire departments? Or did you use your algorithm to change the different costs to the different townships? Because as I feel that we have a fixed cost to run 3 fire departments, and if you're going to be a member of the organization, that should be divided among the 5 townships. And if you're going to do anything differently, if you're going to use a different cost for the other municipalities, it would be in the disposable stuff like gasoline and utilities and stuff like that we don't know what the fixed costs are. But the fixed costs, I believe everybody should share in the equal distribution of that.
Could you say more about what is a fixed cost as opposed to an unfixed cost to help me understand?
Okay, the fixed costs are built things that we know from year to year that have historical significance to run the fire departments. Off the top of my head, I can't give you exact breakdown because I don't have it in front of me. But we should have fixed costs. What it costs to run the 3 fire departments. We know it happens every year, historical stuff, and then unfixed stuff that are like gasoline and or petroleum products and stuff like that.
Bernie, are you talking about the operating expenses? You want to see them divided by
Yes.
Okay, so you want to see them divided by the municipalities, and then the assessment that Mr. Metric made, then that would be assessed differently from each of the municipalities. Would that be correct?
That's correct. Yes.
Well, we have time. I can try some numbers to understand that a little bit better. What I'm having a hard time understanding is what is an expense that's discretionary or non-discretionary? I guess with the operating, clearly if there are more calls in Westchester, more of the fuel is going to get used in Westchester. Correct?
Yes.
I agree about the calls.
Okay.
That would be the non-discretionary, because we use the services more than the other places do. But I'm sure we have a catalog of everything that every year repeats itself as a fixed cost to run the organization.
So stipends, I guess, could be considered a fixed cost.
Yeah, stipends are fixed costs. Yeah. Like I said, I don't have the list in front of me, but
Yeah,
that's my thought process.
Okay.
Everybody's part of the organization, and whatever that nut is should be divided 5 ways. And then if Westtown doesn't use that many calls, the like for example, the fuel side of it, they would pay a less a percentage on the fuel than the borough would pay, because we're getting a
Okay.
better spent on that in the borough.
Okay. Well, maybe I should explain a little bit more about how the budget works, because it doesn't work the way you're suggesting, but maybe that'll help me understand what you're suggesting. The operating expenses, annual operating expenses. So for year one, the operating expenses, everyone can see about $870,000, and the capital expense is $450,000, or a bottom line expense of 1.3 million and change. That number is repeated again in total revenue under 2024 up the chart. And then that number of 1.3 million is multiplied by the ratio in the right-hand column. So Westchester Borough is paying 40.64% of the operating and the capital expense, and East Bradford 14.16. That's how this is constructed. There's one revenue item that is hidden from view. It is included in the bottom line sum. I don't know why it was hidden from view. I'm not trying to hide things, but it was interest income. We have enough cash flow in the fire fund, and we're managing cash, and we know we can make about 5.4% on idle cash and money markets. So we're making about $30,000 a year on interest income budget. That's what we've budgeted for. And that interest income extends as a benefit to everybody in the fire department according to the ratios.
All right, looking at the chart now, that since it's come back up on the screen, administrative expenses, stipends, insurances, they're pretty much fixed costs that we have every year, and that I can see here, on the spreadsheet, and all the other ones seem to be variables because we don't know what the repairs and we don't know what the fuels expense is going to be. But the overall nut to run the organization should be shared equally among the five, and then all the utilities and then the repairs and fuel should be allocated according to calls. Does that make any more sense, Mr. Metric?
Listening to you describe it makes sense. I'd have to work it out. Have to see what the results are.
It may turn against us even more, but that was my thought process. That belonged to the organization. We have operating expenses, that we know happen every year, and I don't want to take any more time of people. It's going to be a long meeting, but we could talk about that when I get tomorrow night.
Yeah.
Just two things I wanted to talk about. So the fixed cost, the only two things I really see truly as a fixed cost, the stipends, and within the vehicle repairs, we have fixed costs as far as our PMs, our preventative maintenance. So those are fixed. We've seen quite an uptick in repairs, especially when we look at our overall fleet. When we get to that between the 15 and 20 year mark, we're seeing a tremendous rise in our repairs. We're replacing very expensive driveline parts, transmissions, whole engines, that sort of thing. And the way it times out in our cycle, we do see an increase in that. But one thing I would just caution, so we talk about regionalization, and we were one of the first in the region as far as regionalization. We cover 27 square miles, as you see, with all the municipalities, which is rare in our county. But this formula has been in play since 1984. So it's been tested, and we've been able to utilize that and operate the fire department. So the only thing I would caution of taking away, or at least normalizing that with all of the municipalities, then you lose the large seat at the table that you have. Right now, you're the decision makers. So I would be very cautious if you're going to share that across all these municipalities, which I can almost guarantee you more than one are not going to do, because they have such a small piece of the pie. But you have such a large use of our fire department. Majority of what we do is in our municipality here in the borough. And if we normalize that across all 6 members, now it goes from your voice of 1 to 6. So I would just keep that in mind when you look at this.
Thanks, Chief. Anything else, Mr. Metrick?
Sure, yeah. Any more thoughts on the cost share process or how we figured that out? 'Cause I think that's what we were talking about.
Yeah, so we've been using this same formula since 84. Is that the year? Since mid 80s? And so the only reason we're getting these kind of intense changes in the percent allocation is it the only reason because of the assessed value being, I guess, more accurate now than it was?
Well, I'll tell you how
recent
we
history?
did it. We used our geographic information system. We intersected the map I showed you of the fire service area with the municipalities, with the property lines, and then just summarized by property assessed value, regardless of whether we charge those properties taxes or not, because tax-free properties need fire services, and that's the problem. That's the that's the theme we always keep talking about in Westchester. A third of your properties are tax exempt.
And then if we were that far off, which sounds like we were, how confident are we in the data from other municipalities?
Well, it makes me want to check it again, for sure. Yeah, but I'm pretty confident. We did it back in March. We double checked it then, and I'm pretty confident in what we were able to do. We could pull fresher data off of Chester County. Maybe more homes got built in the other townships. Maybe.
I'm just assuming our GIS just looked at the borough and that was it. Did our GIS info look at, do we have that data for the whole region?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
All parcel data
Okay.
served by the county. Yeah, you can grab
Good to
it.
know. Okay, great.
Yeah.
I guess my last question is if it would be appropriate to maybe consider easing into this idea. Would it be possible to spread that to take like a couple years, since it seems like it was such a big difference? Because I mean, seems kind of intense to me that we're gonna do 24% all at one time. Is that something that you think other municipalities would, be willing to extend to us? The idea that, maybe Birmingham would get, this isn't how percentages work, but 6% and then 6%. Instead of doing the 12% reduction immediately? Is that, because this is something we're doing a lot of work on here and it's benefiting them. Do you think they would?
Possible. Yeah, I take that feedback. If we could go to the last slide in the presentation, the year-over-year increase, since Mr. Allen brought it up. The borough's year-over-year increase goes from 422, 419 to 524, 296. Now factor in, first of all, that the pie, before you cut the pie up, the pie is getting 11%, 11.5% bigger. Because we were on this staircase increase of costs, and we've got 2.5 years in our rearview mirror where we haven't been paying more, or no one's been paying more for their services while the actual costs have been growing. So you bank money, the way we were doing it before, you banked money in the first 2.5 years and you spent it in the last 2.5 years of the contract, and then you got hit with a nice big increase when you renewed. I can't do anything about the big increase, but I can do something about the next big increase, and that's why we were thinking it through and thinking a smooth line increase was the way to go. So looking at 11.5% as the increase in the size of the pie, yes, Westchester Borough is at 24.12, but we did not account for the administrative overhead. So of that, I ran the calculations again. It's a little bit different than what you're seeing here, not by much. We ran it again. We got about 5% more coming back to the borough. I think our bottom line number, you did update this. Very good. No, the bottom line number I have on my presentation is a $57,600 coming back from the fire fund to the general fund. if you discount that $101,000 year over year increase, you get the percentage increase down to 10.5%.
So instead of, I appreciate the percentage, instead of 24.12, we're looking at a 10.5% increase. And do you know it's about like $102,000 increase without the administrative expenses factored in? Do you know that number with them factored in?
Say again?
Yeah, sure. So the 24% increase corresponded to that $102,000 increase. Yeah, I mean, I feel like maybe ballpark it, but the 10.5% increase, what would that corresponding number actually look like?
44,277.
That's a lot less scary. That's the big number at the bottom.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks. Appreciate it.
I'd like to take just a,
Sorry.
sure,
So that sheet,
has some errors in it.
has errors. It's just the bottom. It's the only error is the big bold at the bottom.
Yeah, Barbara and I reran some admin expense analysis today. I reformatted I republished the presentation, but that's not the one that's on the screen. The numbers I've quoted verbally to you of a $57,600 transfer, reducing the borough's increase, year-over-year increase to $44,277. That's the right number, which works out to be 10.5%, not
24.
not 24 and not 11.5 or whatever was just up there that when now it vanished.
So is this 24 correct?
No.
Yeah. Help me.
So the 24.12% underneath the 2024 number is on the last slide. Is that correct?
That is a $102,000 increase in the costs that everybody are sharing equally. But we get the borough, because we're doing the overhead, we're doing the work. Part of that cost that's being spread out over all of the membership, including us, is our administrative overhead, which is, we ran the numbers. It's I didn't understand.
Just to be clear, so I provided that handout this evening. That is a breakdown of the overhead. So the $80,000 number that you see under administration, we broke down what our overhead would be, and it's around $57,000. That money will come back to the borough's general fund as a transfer. So that would come off of that 24.12%, if that makes any more sense.
I got it.
I have a longer term question with some of these larger apartment buildings coming into town, which will obviously increase our assessed value. So between 2024, 2027, say that increases, assessed value by 100 million. I have no idea what it would be, but how does that, is there an initial assessment, or is it just built into the taxes, or how will they be accounted for?
So far, the way it's been accounted for is a one-time assessment at the time that the contract's written. So I haven't seen any provisions in a contract or budget where there was a annual check-in of increased value.
And that's going to be true for any development, any new development with any other municipality. Say, for example, Worksession, any updates there that they make, the new Aldi over there. So that's going to take into consideration commercial property and all that as well, right?
This process, this budget, this plan has one measurement point, which is we took the data down from the server in March of this year. There's no provisions in the contract to continually
It's
do
going to
it.
change yearly then.
It's going to change. Yeah, the numbers will change, but you have, I mean, how much, it's not so much the number, clearly the numbers are changing, things are changing, but the issue is the balance going to be any different? And is it worth the analysis to figure that out? There are 1,000 homes being built in Westtown Township that have to be served 2 years from now. You know, and those were questions we asked the managers, and we thought through, is there anything that's really going to upset the balance significantly? And our thought was there wasn't anything.
Really quick, I just wanted to say, I know we're kind of long meeting here, but I really appreciate that we're using GIS data, that we're being like really clear about this, and we're definitely getting all this information right, and that we're planning ahead 5 years. It's like one of my favorite things I've seen us do in the past few years. So thank you.
Thanks.
Okay. Anything else, Mr. Metric?
I got to talk about the really expensive stuff now. The equipment. And I'll go over it quickly for everyone's sake. If you go backwards, there's a nice picture of a tanker truck from Goodwill. Fire companies love their apparatus. It's like pictures of their children, right? So what we did, major equipment's the biggest expense of volunteer fire companies, right? And we should be thankful we have a thriving volunteer fire company, or else I'd be talking about lot larger numbers to you tonight. And that equipment's replaced in either a 10 or 20-year cycle. Something like that is a 20-year equipment cycle, and something like an SUV or smaller vehicle gets replaced on a 10-year cycle. So on the next slide, what we did was we asked Steve, on the next slide, to put together a capital replacement schedule that projected the costs of replacing everything in the fleet. And then we broke it out by 5-year cycles to try and get an idea of what capital expenses are landing, not only in this 5-year budget, but in the next 5-year budget, the next one after that, and the next one after that. So if you go on to the next slide.
Can you go back to that?
Yeah, sure. We can go slower as fast as you want. Yeah.
Want to go slow, but
Yeah, the big numbers.
please.
Every row is a piece of equipment with wheels that rolls and is either at one of the 3 fire companies. There's actually a couple boats on there too.
So people don't have wheels.
Where it states chief, assistant chief, that's meaning their vehicles.
Correct. So yeah, yeah. So
Fire.
you just heard Assistant Chief Scanlon. He just left. He's going to a house fire right now. So what? Right. Yeah, exactly. So those vehicles, as Mr. Metric said, are on a 10-year replacement, where the larger, our heavies, are on a 20-year. So again, the smaller vehicles, 10-year, because we're running them harder, more miles. The larger apparatus, we're stretching out to 20. But good. Yeah. Go ahead. I had some. I'll let him. Yeah, I don't want to steal his thunder.
So we wanted to grab every vehicle in its replacement year and sort it into which contract it was going to land in. That's what's on the upper right corner. And if you go to the next slide, if you're a visual thinker, that's what it looks like. So when we saw this, we said, oh, great, we're in a really low capital expenditure cycle. We can go back to our boards and councils and say, hey, here's your 10% reduction in costs. And then, just as long as we quit our jobs within 5 years and didn't have to deal with the consequences of that, we'd be fine, right? But we have 3 big contract cycles staring us in the face down the road. So the thinking was, instead of paying just the blue bar into the capital program, why don't we add in an additional payment into the capital pool that can pay down future costs of these capital investments, and also earn some interest on that to further reduce the cost of those capital investments. And so the figure we settled on was around $82,000. The reason we settled on that number was we wanted to find a number that we thought could be palatable to the membership and that it wouldn't bust up the increases too bad. But what we have different stories we're telling our boards and townships. I'm coming in to tell you we have an increase coming, and the others are happy about it, happy about the numbers. But we all agreed that we should be doing something about this looming capital expense down the road by making extra contributions to the tune of about $412,000 over the course of this contract. Invest that money in a high-yielding money market account. Mr. McGinnis has assured me that rates will remain high for the next 5 years. And we also discussed that, and there was appetite to make a joint application to the local share grant program to get one of these pieces of equipment partially funded with grant dollars and see if that could further get us down the road. And the first one coming down the road would be our 2027 purchase engine for Goodwill. Is that 50? No, First Westchester. I almost got it right. For about $1.4 million. And it won't be long before we have to start.
Starting now.
They've already started.
And the process for the custom apparatus, pre-COVID, usually about 2 years out, we put a committee together, and hundreds of hours are made up by the committees to design these trucks. Now we've spoken to a lot of our suppliers, and they're recommending 4 years. So 4 years for the production, because there's a waiting list, and production usually takes 12 to 18 months. So then back that up, then you have all these pre-builds and meetings you have to do ahead of it. So, you're looking at 4 years to build a truck. So, going into these, we talked to Mr. Metric, we talked about changing the formulas. We talked about changing the terms. We looked at 3 years, so it wasn't as volatile, but 5 years is what we've been doing. And then when you're looking at it, takes 4 years to replace or to put a committee together and build a truck. That's what we're doing now. Another thing we're going to have to face moving forward that we didn't in the past, these were always paid upon delivery. Now a lot of these manufacturers are dictating that you pay up front. And you're talking 2 years ahead of when you receive this, that you're paying up front. And I think, when you look at this and we get 2 contributions a year, January and June, is it, from the municipalities. So this at least account that Mr. Metric and Ms. Leonti are building up here is giving the borough the ability to make these purchases up front. Because if you look at the replacement, moving forward, some of these high ticket items happen early in the contract. It's not like we get 5 years worth of contribution, then we buy the truck. It could be in year 1, it could be in year 2 that the borough, might have to put this money up front. So building this up ahead of time is very, very beneficial. We talked about even looking at our replacement schedule and potentially moving some of the trucks around. I wouldn't recommend going any further because we're already squeezing them out as long as they can. We should, if anything, go a little shorter. However, but then obviously that drives the cost up. So we're kind of in this in between, but certainly, Mr. Allen, to your point, 100%, that's where we came up with this. We now have the ability to right size this. This is that low year, and what the team came up with that extra to try to kick us into the next 5-year contract, I think benefits us all, even though I'll be long gone.
Chief Pellner, I have a question, or Mr. Metric, I'm not sure who can answer, but the engine 51-1 that's coming up in 2027 for
Yep.
1.4, why is the cost of that 1.4? And then the engines in 2036 are 1.1? I would expect the cost to go up.
Okay. So we use the most recent costs for those. and that's where we just put a placeholder in. And this is all pie in the sky numbers, really, when we get far out. The only thing that we could guarantee truly is the next 5 years. And we didn't want to, to your point, I mean, that's a great find on that. But we just did a year over year. I think it was 3%. Is that what? 4%. So Barb calculated 4% year over year to come up with that number from the most recent price. And again, that's for the items outside of the next 5 years. Do I think prices are going to go down? No, but we wanted to at least be fair with the numbers. We didn't want to completely escalate them. So.
And one last point, while we're talking about capital is, and I understand the buck stops with council, right? And you all decide where the money gets spent and how it should be allocated. And if $44,000, a 10.5% increase is too far to jump in 1 year, I understand that. I would encourage you maybe to focus on this piece of the budget as a way to walk it into maybe year 2 or 3. If 44,000 is too far of a road to go, I can take it back to the township and maybe say, hey, that yellow bar needs to be a little skinnier in year 1 and 2. And that recoups some of our money back in years 1 and 2. And then we can increase the capital expenditure. I think it's a good idea to pay down expenses into the future. And now I'm just arguing not to do it, but I think you have a hard decision to find out where the dollars should go, and that's the clearest lever. Mr. Flynn was talking about fixed and non-fixed. I just talked about something that is really, I think it's prudent to do, but it's discretionary. And if 44,000 is too far to go, you can throttle back a little bit in year 1 and 2 on that. And that's all I have. I know I went on pretty long.
Really quickly too, you talked about grants to help with this in the future. Is that being done by our administration?
Talked about.
Looking at grants.
Yeah.
Is that factored into our admin overhead?
Not yet. No.
So that would be awesome as well, because that would probably help us out, I'm sure, at least some.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, Mr. Metric. So will we pull this forward into our overall budgeting, or is this separate? Okay.
Yeah, we'll keep it in rhythm with everything else that we're going to be doing next month and on October and November.
Okay. Thank you. Hello.
Darrell Cook, South Walnut Street. How much has Westchester University contributed for firefighting services in the last 5 years, 10 years, 15, 20? Did one of their largest structures built on North Campus count into messing up the assessment value?
Good question, Mr. Cook. Okay, any other comments on the budget? All right, we're going to move on to item number 5. Discuss the Borough of Westchester's 225th celebration. This came to committee and was recommended 3-0. Any discussion on that item? No.
Yeah, the summary here is we were looking at having the borough support the establishment of a group of residents that would have the ability to, collect funds and spend funds in order to properly celebrate the 225th anniversary for the borough, which is how we've done it in the past for the 200th, and it's how we'll do it again for the 250th down the road. And then there's also other historic landmarks coming up pretty soon after that, including the nation's 250th, that they can then also kind of work together and make sure we got all those bases covered.
Any other comments? Consent agenda?
I just have one question, because I wasn't at that meeting. What role is the Historic Commission playing in this process of planning, collecting funds?
Our understanding, like officially, is none.
I'm sorry?
None. I'm sure members will help the effort, but the borough isn't moving money for this. We're just supporting this outside group being established.
No, I mean, are they going to be helping in the planning role and securing funds for this?
To my knowledge, no.
Okay. We should look to them because that's in the borough code. The historic commission is created for things like this. I think they should have a role in assisting with the planning of this event.
Yeah.
Correct. Yeah, Mr. Walsh was not speaking to us on behalf of the historic commission. Just to be clear about that, I know that's a little bit confusing, but
I believe he did mention their role in previous celebrations, such as 2000, and us providing guidance to these groups. But he just left, and there he is.
There he is. Mr. Walsh.
Yeah.
We have a question for you. Can you confirm that the Historic Commission's role in the 225th celebration?
We really have none. We'll work with whatever groups the borough puts together or a nonprofit and so on. We may do some minor things, but we have no role. It's beyond us. It's too big, depending upon the size of what you want to do.
Okay, thank you.
So we have nothing planned to my knowledge right now. We are working instead on Lafayette's return in 2025.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Walsh. Consent agenda?
Yes.
I guess my question is, are we putting on the consent agenda that we dedicate funds for it, or that we dedicate support for it? Support? No funds.
Support. Any other comments? All right, moving on to number 6, approve the September 16th, 2023 Up on the Roof resolution. Committee recommendation 3-0.
yeah, this was standard. I don't think anything changed with this one. We do this every year.
Any comments? Okay, consent?
Yes.
Okay. All right. 7, Parking Committee, authorize the solicitor to edit Chapter 77 Parking Permit Residential at a cost of $500 to include modifying the business permit use, student rental permit use, create temporary service permits, and guest passes. Committee recommendation was 3-0.
This was to sort of improve the way we are running our permitting system to allow students with out-of-state license plates to attain a parking permit in our borough, and also to get businesses who are using our borough system to do it in a more sort of responsible way.
Any comments? Council? Consent? Okay. Number 8, schedule a public hearing for an amendment to Chapter 104-32, parking prohibited during certain hours, October 18th, 2023. Committee recommendation 3-0.
This is the street sweeping update.
Consent?
Yes.
Moving on to number 10, Public Works, approve the Marshall Square Park landscape plan as presented by Friends of Marshall Square Park. Committee recommendation 3-0.
Yeah, we have 2 representatives if you have questions, but the Friends of Marshall Square Park presented a beautiful plan for some landscaping improvements at the corner of Matlack and Marshall. That's something that the Friends would be paying for and maintaining in perpetuity. So I It was a 3-0 recommendation, and so if you have any questions, please feel free.
Any questions, comments?
I say move it to consent.
Okay, consent. Kurowski?
Yes, Keith Kraus, Director of Parks and Rec Department. Between last week's meeting and this meeting, we had staff had come up with 2 questions to present to the Friends of Marshall Square Park as part of their plan. And we'd asked them to come tonight to explain those 2 parts. One was that the fencing was not going to be in the public right away, and what was going to be the anchoring system that the fence was going to be used to anchor it to the ground. So we asked Jeff and Ann to come to explain that briefly, just to make sure that we were all aware of what they were going to be doing at the park.
Thank you.
Jeff Bytel, president of Marshall Square Park. And this is,
Ann Walters, Friends of Marshall Square Park.
yes, there was a staff review letter that opened 2 questions about the right-of-ways and also the detail on the fence.
So
Is that on?
talk about
I don't see the detail.
it is on the next sheet.
The next sheet?
Next slide.
I don't know whether I see it.
It is. There.
Oh, okay, there's the detail of the fence. And
So the questions were regarding the location of the right-of-way on Matlack and as well as Marshall Street. We have since added that to the plan as well as a fence detail that you can see right there. And if you go down a little bit, page down a little, there's additional fence detailing, which identifies the size of the members, the installation method that will be 12 inches below grade in concrete. It's all identified appropriately. If you don't mind going back to the first slide, it shows the right-of-ways locations, which we were able to obtain through Mike Dunn, who got the information for us. Previous slide. There you go. The North Matlack Street side, the right-of-way is identified with a dashed line, and the same on East Marshall Street. We're well inside the appropriate right-of-way line on East Marshall, and on North Matlack, we're maybe 2 feet outside the right-of-way there, and yet it's just landscaping and a rail of the fence railing. It's not our anticipation that in the future that North Matlack Street will in fact be widened to such an extent that that landscaping or fence would be in the way. Should it ever occur, the Friends of Marshall Square Park will adjust that landscaping. But those were the 2 items, along with an identification that the bocce ball court is a future plan item. So happy to answer questions about that. Some of that was technical, and I apologize.
yeah, just an explanation on that right-of-way. The right-of-way on North Matlack is actually 10 feet wider than Marshall, and Marshall, of course, is a state road. Matlack is already 37 feet curb to curb, 2 travel lanes and 2 parking lanes. Some of the streets up in our section of town do have some unusually large right-of-ways, which I don't foresee in any of our lifetimes ever getting built out. So that's why that fence that we're showing there is a little bit inside that right-of-way line, but it is right at the appropriate point where we have flat and then we go to the slope that goes down into the park. So it's really the place that the fence should be.
Yeah, exactly. So if we were to move that fence further down the slope, it would be in conflict with existing trees and really an inappropriate location for it in general. I remind everybody that the genesis of the whole idea was to help contain kids from running out into the street. And so from the playground that's right adjacent. So having that planted on both sides tends to, as well as a low 30-inch high fence, will help to contain the kids a little bit and give parents a little bit of comfort about their kids roaming in that area. So that was the original desire there, if that helps.
Thank you. Any other questions?
I have 2 quick ones. because I can't tell from here, is the fence on the inside of the trees? So it's first the fence, then the trees? Because
Yes.
there's a lot of plantings on both sides of that street.
So-
Or is it the trees and then the fence?
Well, if you're walking on the brick sidewalk, there is about a 2-foot space on the right side. The street's on your left. And right here, there's about 2 feet of low ground covers, then the fence, then the trees and the landscaping that goes down the hill. So the railing is more at the 30 inches above the sidewalk elevation. So it's here, if you're here. Does that help?
Yeah, that helps. And so this is only really going to help toddlers, nobody else. I mean, no other children. I mean,
Children that
3
are,
years old and under,
well,
because at 30 inches,
in my experience, well, first I should say that all of those plants are no higher than, they'll never get higher than 30, 36 inches high. So I understand. So all I was going to say is, yes, somebody from the sidewalk could jump over that fence at 30 inches high, but it's not a terribly attractive thing to do. I know there are people who are going to want to try anything, but there's a lot of landscaping on the downhill side, so they'd be jumping into shrubs and ground covers if they chose to do that. Is it going to restrain that action? Maybe not. Deter? Yes, I hope so. So it's a deterrent. That's all.
And also, there's a lot of erosion on that slope. So we're trying to deter people from walking there and protect the slope, protect the root zone of those trees. Because it is actually, if it's wet, it can get slippery and be actually dangerous
Yeah, it
trying
actually
to get down there. So it's kind of doing a multitude of things.
I mean, I love the idea and the plantings along with the fence. It's beautiful, particularly since it replicates the one around the fountain.
Thank you, yes.
I was just concerned that it wouldn't really inhibit anyone except toddlers, that's all. Because
Well, we're-
5-year-old, I envision my granddaughter, 5 years old, she would think that was a, challenge.
I understand.
Yeah.
We also are trying to be sensitive to not be restrictive to people, restrictive to views, safety. All those things play into that height that we chose. That's about the height of the fence around the fountain.
Yeah, this is only 6 inches lower than the one around the fountain.
Approximately. It's similar, and it doesn't totally keep people out of the fountain, but we're trying. So anyway.
Any other comments?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Consent. Thank you. All right. Public safety, approve the special events application for the Chester County Outfest on October 14th, 2023.
I think we skipped over 11. I think we skipped over the Taylor Run stream restoration easements, number 11.
I sure did. I'm sorry. Approve the easements for the Taylor Run Stream Restoration Project. A recommendation 3-0.
Yeah, this is for temporary easements to do the project. So 2 private owners that are on the front side of the project. Pretty straightforward. 3-0 for consent.
Questions, comments? Recommendation for consent? All right. Public safety, item number 12, approve the special events application for Chester County Outfest on October 14th, 2023. Committee recommendation 3-0. It's up on the screen. I think that the attachment was included in both this agenda as well as the public safety agenda. It's been approved by the police and reviewed by the police department as well and recommended by the committee. Any questions on this permit application? Recommendation for consent? Okay. Moving on to 13, approve the Westchester Borough Restaurant Festival Beer and Wine Garden. Again, this was recommended 3-0 by the committee. I think this is standard for the restaurant festival. Any questions? Consent?
Yes.
All right. Request, item number 14, request the Civil Service Commission to create a certified list of eligible candidates for the appointment as police officers. So I understand that the last list has been retired and we need to start the process over again to fill vacancies on the police department. Recommendation 3-0 by committee. Consent?
Yes.
Moving on to item number 15 for smart growth, approve subdivision plan for lot line change at 101 East Ashbridge. Committee recommendation 3-0.
Yes, I mean, essentially, this would be to prevent any future building on that lot. Would that be correct, Mr. Gore?
Yeah, it would eliminate the possibility for any subdivision and future infill development. It's also increasing the rear yard for the property at 101 East Ashbridge, which is located at the corner at the intersection of the two streets, North Walnut and East Ashbridge. The owner of 101 owns both of those parcels. He just wants to relocate that property line to give himself some more room and still maintaining zoning compliance for both lots.
Any questions? Consent item?
Yes.
Thank you. Number 16, approve the July 2023 HARB submission recommendation. Recommendations. 220 West Gay.
Yeah, A, B, C, and D are all self-explanatory with slight modifications for B and C.
I see recommendations from the committee to approve certificates of appropriateness for A, B, C, and D, correct?
Correct.
And consent?
Yes.
Finance and Revenue Committees. Item number 17, approve the donation to Westchester Downtown Foundation. Committee recommendation 3-0.
This was for the Preservation Awards event.
Consent?
Yes.
Okay. Enter into agreement with Flash Parking, Inc. to upgrade garage systems and payment technology at a cost of $230,000, $833, and monthly expense of $1,840 a month for 5 years at Chestnut Street and Bicentennial garages.
So for this one, we are already paying monthly for what we currently use. I forget the exact number, like it's similar. The monthly charge I remember being relatively close. We're having issues with the ticket system, correct? It's just totally causing problems. Yeah, yeah, I remember that. Yeah, last week during our meeting, everything kind of broke down. So it's been an issue. And this seems like a really cool system. It was the second lowest price. It wasn't the lowest bid, but the prices were pretty close. And this seems way better. The stuff that I thought was cool about it in committee was that it can read license plates and kind of just manage time that way, which just makes sense. And then in the future, we could potentially go to a gateless system because of that. So you just drive in, you pay, and you don't need to deal with all that fun stuff. So seems cool. Great way to modernize what we got going here.
Recommendation for consent?
Yes, please.
Item number 20, purchasing approvals. A,
19.
oh, really a little anxious to end this meeting.
I don't blame you.
I think we all are. Okay, 19, approve amended grant resolution for DCED Multimodal Transportation Fund, High Street Streetscape Improvements. 3-0.
And I believe this was just to update that bottom line number. Is that correct? Yeah, nothing else has changed.
Recommendation for consent?
Yes.
All right, now on to purchasing approvals. Item number 20, approve payment to Lewis Environmental for $16,089.91. Approve McClure Company CoStar's proposal for Taylor Run. Approve one-year contract with Muni Billing at